everybody? It is time for the Stokastic NFL Deeper Dive. We have a Thursday night football game that honestly, coming into the season, Neil, I would have thought this was going to be a banger. We've got the Denver Broncos at home against the Indianapolis Colts, and really did look like a good game on paper just a few weeks ago. Maybe a little bit less so now. Both the quarterbacks kind of look washed up. The star running backs for both teams not going to be playing today, but here's the good news. It gives us value to talk about. It gives us some talking points, and I do think it brings some edges to the slate as well, where we're going to try to break down some of these situations, in particular at running back. So while you guys come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to No House Advantage, the sponsor of today's show. Neil, how are you feeling about tonight's football game?
Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. As you say, missing both of the starting running backs. So we've got some cheaper options in there. Not super cheap, but, relatively cheap. And then the backups are very cheap. It's also sort of a mess just because it's hard to know exactly how these running back situations are going to break down. I think, Melvin Gordon, pretty clearly the RB1 for the Broncos. It's kind of unclear what Nahim Heinz's role is going to be, like exactly how much more work he's going to be, because he's not the same kind of runner as Jonathan Taylor. So it'll be interesting to see how it breaks down. And then just the tight ends in particular. I mean, this is Showdown slate. We got to talk about tight ends. It's a mess. The Broncos have 4 tight ends that they used last week. Greg Dulcich, from what I can tell on Twitter, the chatter, I haven't seen anything like confirmed by anybody who has sources, but people are saying they're not expecting him back this week. So that makes it a little bit easier, I guess, if Dulcich is not coming back, but still they have 4 tight ends who could potentially be active for the Broncos, and then 3 for the Colts. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a mess.
Yeah. And then, I mean, as far as these teams go individually, they have been pretty underwhelming this year. And then, I mean, we've got the Colts, Broncos, both teams that people were, fairly high on coming into the season. They've underwhelmed in a pretty big way. We're going to be talking about the game a little bit more in a second, but just your pick for the game. Who are you picking to win outright?
Who am I picking to win outright? Man, that is a good question. I guess I'd go with the Broncos. I think they're the better team. Not a strong take there. Do you have an opinion here?
Yeah, I am going to go. Actually, I feel very strongly about the Denver Broncos in this spot because I know you, like myself, like to look at DVOA. Do you know which team to this point in the season is dead last in the NFL in DVOA?
Overall DVOA?
Yep.
I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. No, the Detroit Lions.
It's the Indianapolis Colts by actually a really wide margin.
I thought for sure that you were fucking with me and it was going to be somebody not in this game. I mean, that was obviously where you led me, but I thought for sure you were fucking with me.
I was trying to give you a layup. The Colts are dead last. They are 32nd in DVOA. In offensive DVOA, they're 32nd. The gap between them and the second to worst offense is a monumental chasm. So we have the Panthers are 31st and the Colts are 32nd, but the Colts are like 33% worse than what the Panthers have been in terms of offensive value this year. So considering the Broncos are at home for this game and the line is kind of tight here, 3.5 points, I do like the Denver Broncos in this spot. So that is going to be my pick to win. And I feel pretty good about it. By the way, for the people watching also that are able to bet, it is something I placed a bet on. So I do think this is a good spot for the Broncos considering how bad the Colts have been. And let's talk more about how bad the Colts have been, starting with their quarterback, Matt Ryan. And I don't know about you, Neil, but coming into the year, I had some hope for Matt Ryan despite his age, just because I felt like some of his struggles in Atlanta, could they really be his fault? The offensive line was bad. He didn't really have pass catchers to throw to last year, especially after Calvin Ridley got hurt. So the wide receiving situation wasn't great for them. But overall, he's just looked pretty poor this year. So I want to know, how are you going to handle Matt Ryan tonight against one of the best defenses in the NFL in the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, I mean, I still expect him to just be a volume play tonight, even though I don't think he's a great quarterback. He's not somebody I targeted at all this offseason in best ball or season-long leagues. I was not very high on Matt Ryan. I kind of assumed that he was washed. And then sort of towards the end of the summer, I saw that a lot of sharp people were kind of on him, and I was like, oh, maybe this is a flaw in my process. So I started drafting him a little bit here and there, but still, I was never all that high on Matt Ryan. Yeah, I don't think he's a great quarterback, but assuming that they're going to have to throw to stay in the game, I still think that he's a fine play just because, he's the only quarterback for the Colts. He's going to have some volume. He's cheaper than Pittman or Russell Wilson, the third most expensive on the slate. He looks pretty good in the boom bust tool. Looks a little bit under-owned, both in terms of captain ownership and utility ownership. So I'm probably going to be right around the field on Matt Ryan.
I prefer him on DraftKings to FanDuel, though, all things considered. FanDuel, where he's 15,000, and there's pricing tiers over on FanDuel where you got Russ is by far the most highly priced player on FanDuel, 16,500. Then you got 15,000 for Matt Ryan, and then there's a gap. You get to Michael Pittman at 14,000. Considering how expensive Matt Ryan is there compared to over on DraftKings, where he is, what is he? He's the fourth most expensive player, and then still there's players still priced around him. Sutton's close, Melvin Gordon's close. I think he's kind of tough to pay up for over on FanDuel with, a lot of regularity. So DraftKings was a little cheaper. He makes sense. FanDuel, not that he'd be an outright fade, but I just have other priorities to pay up for. I'd rather get to Russell Wilson if I'm paying all the way up to the top. I think the salary savings for Michael Pittman or Cortland Sutton would come in handy. So do you view Matt Ryan differently on FanDuel as compared to DK?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. He's a little bit tougher to play on FanDuel just because of that price tag being higher than other players that I would expect to put up higher point totals. But being the quarterback, he's still not that unlikely to be in the lineup somewhere in the optimal lineup. He looks like he's a little bit over-owned in the. Actually, no, I'm misreading this. This is messed up. He looks like he's approximately about how owned he should be in the flex and a little bit under-owned in the captain spot on FanDuel. And on FanDuel, there's no salary multiplier in the MVP spot on FanDuel. So you really just want whoever's going to be the highest scorer of the game in that MVP spot. So he's looking a little bit under-owned at 9% projected ownership, 10% optimal in the MVP spot. Still not somebody I'm going to be, forcing into my lineups, but my guess is I'll be close to the field.
Yeah, and now let's start talking about some of these Indianapolis running backs. And this is going to be a really interesting situation. Also one that's going to play pretty different on DraftKings versus FanDuel, because we're going to have to talk about Phillip Lindsay in a second. And on DK, he's basically free in terms of his price. He's, was it 600, 400, over on DK, whereas on FanDuel, 7,500. So still very cheap. But there's a pretty big difference between 7,500 cheap and 400 cheap. But first, just a general overview. With Jonathan Taylor out of the mix, Phillip Lindsay called up from the practice squad today. What are you expecting the workload difference to be between Lindsay and Nahim Heinz?
It's really an unknown situation. So my guess would be that Nahim Heinz gets a little bit more work than he usually does. I still think that he's generally, the pass catching back, the third down back. But I think that, Phillip Lindsay is probably not going to just step in and take over that Jonathan Taylor role. I don't think he has that kind of talent. So I think Nahim Heinz will take on a little bit more of the load. Phillip Lindsay will certainly, I would expect him to take on enough of the load to look pretty good point per dollar for a $400 back. So Phillip Lindsay certainly looks pretty good. He looks good in the tools, looks under-owned in both the captain spot and the flex spot. Pretty neutral, but 4.7% projected ownership in the captain spot. We have him optimal in the captain spot, 4.9%. So very neutral there. But then in the utility spot, a little bit more positive leverage, 25% projected ownership, 30% optimal. I think it's a decent matchup. I think that he should have a pretty big role. I think it's a big unknown, to be honest, the way these running backs break down, just because Jonathan Taylor took on so much of that load, and we don't know if they trust Phillip Lindsay or if they trust Deion Jackson or if they want to try Nahim Heinz in a bigger role. It's possible, but he hasn't really taken on that big of a role at any point in his career where he's getting 20 carries. So I would be surprised to see Nahim Heinz getting taking over that Jonathan Taylor role. I think that the other backs are going to be certainly in the mix as well.
And what do you make of some of these reports? I don't know if you've seen them, but there are beat reporters that are speculating that Lindsay could end up leading the team in carries today. I don't know if you've seen any of that today. Do you buy into that? Because there is a part of me that's like, well, he can't just play the Jonathan Taylor role. But there is a thing to me where I think, like, is it possible that just Nahim Heinz gets used more as a pass catcher and maybe doesn't get as many rush attempts, and we just see Lindsay used a lot more as a rusher? I think that's a possibility. But either way, I think Lindsay's pretty clearly the top value play on this slate.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's certainly a possibility that he leads the team in carries. I don't think that it's going to be 20 carries that he's leading the team with, but he could lead the team in carries with 10. That wouldn't be shocking to me. And at 400, he'd look pretty good. I like Phillip Lindsay quite a bit. He's going to be, a big part of a lot of my lineups tonight.
And then I want to know, in terms of Nahim Heinz, where you're looking at him just relative to some of his ownership and price point right now on DraftKings. And once again, another player who does look better on DK than FanDuel, because number one, Heinz is somebody who's very involved in the passing game, so he's going to get those PPR points. Whereas on FanDuel, not only does he only get half a point for each reception, but FanDuel kind of aggressively priced him up with the potential expectation that there wouldn't be Jonathan Taylor. So he's $11,000 over on FanDuel, DK at $6,800 in the utility. He's one of my favorite plays in the mid-range over on DK. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. He looks great on DraftKings. I do think that there is a pretty big disparity, as you pointed out, on DraftKings from FanDuel. But on DraftKings, yeah, 6,800. I mean, he's 2,000 cheaper than Melvin Gordon on DraftKings. That seems fine to me because Melvin Gordon, I think, is pretty clearly going to step in and be the RB1 for the Broncos. He was already splitting. So my expectation would be that Melvin Gordon certainly takes on that bigger role. Whereas Nahim Heinz, I think it's a little bit more questionable what his role looks like without Jonathan Taylor there. But I do think that it's likely that he takes on a bigger role. And 6,800, Nahim Heinz has those spike weeks from time to time. He can score some receiving touchdowns, a couple receiving touchdowns in a game is certainly within his range of outcomes. So, and even without that, I think that he can pay off this salary. So yeah, I think 6,800, certainly a fair price for Nahim Heinz. Looks like he is going to be owned about where he should in the captain spot, around 11% optimal, around 11% projected ownership. And then in the util spot, he's looking a little bit under owned, 40% projected ownership, and then 49% optimal. So he looks pretty good, especially in the util spot, but he looks neutral in the captain spot as well. I'll be playing plenty of Nahim Heinz. He allows you to fit in some better players throughout the rest of your lineup.
Yeah, and then going over to FanDuel, where these players are different for a couple of reasons. I mentioned before the salary difference, and then also in terms of Heinz, the way that he generally gets his fantasy points, it's just more favorable towards DraftKings scoring as compared to FanDuel. So where I think that he's fairly underowned over on DK at the elevated price point, and then also him overall picking up just under 40% ownership over on FanDuel, I view him as just being about neutrally owned. And then Phillip Lindsay as well. If you need him for salary savings, well and good. There aren't other players that I want to roster that are around his price point. I think he's pretty clearly the best one. But still, we have him being a little bit overowned in the boom bust tool, and he's just not the same priority for me when he's $7,500 as opposed to being $400. So Lindsay and Heinz, to me, they're much more neutral plays on FanDuel than they are on DraftKings.
Yeah, I think neutral plays is exactly right. Nahim Heinz, I mean, he's 34% projected ownership. When I saw the 11,000 price tag on FanDuel, I kind of thought he'd be like single digit owned potentially. Like people might say that's just too much. I think that I'm probably going to be under the field on FanDuel on Nahim Heinz. The first crunch I ran, I was not under the field. I was actually above the field. But I think that by the time I'm done with my crunches, I'll end up being a little bit under the field on Nahim Heinz, just because to me, he does look a little bit too expensive for what I expect his role to be, particularly as you say, without the full point per reception. He becomes a little bit less interesting. Phillip Lindsay, yeah, he looks pretty good at 7,500. I think that at 7,500, it's likely in a low scoring game that a single touchdown could pay off that price tag. He could be optimal just with one touchdown. It's still, he's not, the basement. He's not 5,000, 5,500, where that would be more of a certainty. He still might need to do a little bit more than just one touchdown, but I think that it's certainly, he's got the spike week potential at 7,500 for Phillip Lindsay. And also on FanDuel, Deion Jackson, 9,500 somehow. That was a shocker to me. But with that said, 0.1% projected ownership as a result. If he's active, I might take a few shots there and just hope for the random touchdown for the unowned back and hope for a low scoring game.
Yeah, I mean, the 9,500 price tag, here's what it goes to is just I think the way that FanDuel approaches is like, all right, we're going to assume Jonathan Taylor isn't playing. And we don't want to give anybody a free square. So they just priced up every back imaginable. Like Deion Jackson being 9,500 is just the most ridiculous thing ever. So points per dollar, pretty clearly the worst play on the slate. I don't think anybody could project Deion Jackson to be worth that 9,500 price tag. But to Neil's point, maybe he scores the odd touchdown there. If you were playing 150 lineups, how many would you be willing to include Deion Jackson in?
I mean, so I play a pretty aggressive style with some of these players who are getting no ownership. I could see myself going as much as 15, around 10% Deion Jackson is, which is aggressive. That is not something I would necessarily recommend. It's just if he's going to be 0.1% owned, that's an easy path to cutting through the field, just hoping for that one random touchdown. I would not suggest going to 10%, but I could see myself getting there depending on how the rest of my lineups look. I should say people are in chat are talking about Latavius Murray. Latavius Murray is expected to be inactive, whereas Devine Ozigbo is now expected to be active. I think we should at least touch on Devine Ozigbo. You're laughing at me. He's 6,000, 0.1% projected ownership. He's probably in the same boat as Deion Jackson for me, maybe even better because of the price tag, because I think at 6,000 he's like a certainty to pay off that price tag with a touchdown, and maybe he gets garbage time. I think it's worth maybe a shot here or there at 0.1%.
Yeah, and just to reiterate to everybody, Latavius Murray is not active. Some of the other inactives today for the Colts, I will read that off in a second while I pull it up on my phone, but Also, if you guys want access to the tools that Neil and I are talking about right now, if you haven't signed up for a Stokastic Plus Platinum package yet, you get access to it for free for 3 days. And you know who could afford free? Basically everybody. So if you've been unsure whether you want to test out all the different stuff we have over here, free. It's a good price to check out, and you can see all our projections, ownership projections. And then from there, you can make a decision on whether the product is for you or not. And if you are signing up for the first time after that, use the promo code NFL Showdown DD. It's a very long promo code. I don't know that that's necessarily optimal, but NFL Showdown DD, and that will get you 50% off your first week of any weekly package. And that would not just include football, but also baseball for the playoffs and basketball as well, which is coming up in the next couple of weeks. Oh, all right. Well, it's not what was in the, it's not what was in here, but whatever. Not my fault. Who do I throw under the bus? Can I blame Jordan? All right, good. I have his phone number. He'll get some text messages from me. All right, back to the slate. Now we've talked about the multitude of Colts running backs here. Oh, actually, I forgot. I was going to tell people the inactives. I got sidetracked there. Colts inactives. So some key names just came across: Jonathan Taylor, Shaq Leonard, Sam Ellinger, and then Blackman, the safety. So nothing really unexpected on that standpoint. But talking about these wide receivers now, and we mentioned that Matt Ryan's had a down year. It's been a difficult year for the Colts passing game, which obviously is going to be the case when the quarterback isn't going particularly well. But they have a very talented wide receiver in Michael Pittman, who's also expensive today across DraftKings and FanDuel, $10,600 over on DK. On FanDuel, he is priced at $14,000. So the most expensive skill player we have in the game. How are you going to approach this spot for Michael Pittman?
Yeah, Michael Pittman's certainly interesting. He's one of those. He doesn't project as well as Cortland Sutton. So, maybe some people will be disinclined. We still got him at 40% projected ownership on DraftKings. I think that Michael Pittman is certainly a player that I'm going to have in a fair amount of lineups, but so is the field. He looks very neutral to me. So in the captain spot, 10.5% projected ownership, 10.1% optimal. 40% owned in the utility spot, 43% optimal. So I'm probably going to be close to the field on Michael Pittman. I like to leave some salary on the table. So sometimes I end up a little bit under the field on some of the more expensive players on the slate. And he is the most expensive player that we have available. Yeah, looks like the most expensive player that we have available on the slate. He projects worse than Cortland Sutton. He's 1,200 more. So, he's somebody that you're going to have to kind of force into your lineups if you're using an optimizer. But I'm going to try to get, probably pretty close to the field.
Let's answer some super chats, and then we'll address the rest of these terrible Colts pass catchers. First, we've got our guy, Big Mike NY21. Matt Ryan or Melvin Gordon in the flex on DK today. So he is asking Matt Ryan or Melvin Gordon. Matt Ryan priced at $9,600. Melvin Gordon at $8,800. So I'm also kind of at the same way that we're unsure about what the usage is going to look like for the Colts running backs. I'm pretty sure Melvin Gordon is going to be the number one guy, but I don't know how involved Mike Boone is going to be, especially because Melvin Gordon has kind of sucked over the last couple of years and the fumble issues as well. So when I'm looking at the pay up options on this slate, I don't know that I necessarily love getting to Melvin Gordon as much as some of these other guys in the high end. Like we have Cortland Sutton projected with better odds being in the optimal lineup, Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson, Michael Pittman. So of those pay up options, Melvin Gordon is one of my least favorite just because I prefer those other guys. I would actually rather get to Matt Ryan than Melvin Gordon.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Matt Ryan, he's a little bit more expensive, but he has better odds of being in the optimal lineup, at least in the utility spot. Actually, in both spots, both the utility and the captain spot, Matt Ryan just has better odds of being in the optimal. The ownership is coming with it, though, too. He is looking like he's going to be owned more than Melvin Gordon, which honestly kind of surprised me. I kind of thought that people would be jamming in Melvin Gordon, and we're not expecting that. We're expecting Melvin Gordon to be under 50% owned. It's kind of a toss-up for me. It kind of honestly depends on the rest of the lineup. That's the hard thing with the questions that are just 1v1. Mean, we do have Matt Ryan projecting better than Melvin Gordon, but are you going to be using the full salary if you have Matt Ryan in there? Then maybe I'd go to Melvin Gordon if we're talking GPP. But just, in a vacuum, Matt Ryan projects better than Melvin Gordon in general. That's going to be my preference.
Next super chat from Eric Traub. In the spirit of Butthole Jenkins, cut the crap. Who is your favorite player under 10% owned in the ownership in the flex spot? So let's see. Under 10%, who stands out the most?
Eric
I got to
Saubert
say, there are
good.
not that many great looking plays that are sub 10% owned. Also, I'm going to point out that kind of based on our projections for DraftKings in general today, given how much value there is on the slate, we are projecting as where some of the best leverage plays are the cheaper low dollar guys like Phillip Lindsay or the Nahim Heinz being another one at a relatively cheap price point. And since you're able to get those guys in for a lot of salary savings and also projected to be under owned, we then have a lot of the high price guys going under owned, which is not typically the case. If you look at the boom bust tool and see like, oh, all of the expensive players are a little bit under owned, it's because the cheap options are such good options on a points per dollar basis that it's a lot of these high end guys look good. And then it's kind of a lot of the other like mid-range type plays that don't look quite as good. And then as far as players under 10% owned, I don't know there's any that I really love. Is there something I'm missing here?
So I think Saubert looks kind of good. The tight end for Denver is sort of interesting. I guess he's only had 6 targets so far this year, so not phenomenal, but he projects okay with Albert O kind of losing favor there. Maybe we're expecting Saubert to be a little bit more involved. He's run 54 routes so far this year. He was the most active tight end, and he played 77% of snaps last week. So maybe he's getting a little bit more involved in the offense. Saubert kind of interesting. I said in my article today, there's no stats based reason to go to Alberto. He looks over owned, if anything. We were expecting, let me see if the ownership has changed since then. Oh, okay. Alberto's ownership has come up significantly. We had him at like under 5% when I wrote the article. We're expecting 16% now. So I don't like that nearly as much for Alberto. So it would be probably Saubert for me. I'm really interested in Paris Campbell as somebody that I think could be more involved. So Paris Campbell's at 10.7%. KJ Hamler, certainly interesting. We've got him at 10.3% right now. We still have Kendall Hinton in the ownership. So I guess we might need to refresh and see where that ownership goes with Kendall Hinton out. Because my expectation would be that KJ Hamler's ownership comes up. But he's a guy that I will have interest in if this ownership is correct. It looks like something we need to correct there. But Paris Campbell, I think, he's a guy who's always a home run threat. He could have a long touchdown. He only played about 8% of snaps the last game, I believe. So was not very involved in the last game, but I could see Paris Campbell getting a little bit more involved at any time. And at 4,400, at 3,600, I have some interest in Paris Campbell.
We've got another super chat here from Justin Alberto. He's saying, doing the Denver D and the kicker with no QBs for single entry. What are our thoughts on that? So my number one thought would be, are you leaving a lot of salary on the table? What's the opportunity cost of that? Individually, I don't have an issue with Mcmanus. The Denver defense, I'm concerned that they're going to end up being massively popular on this slate. And I generally just don't like to play popular defenses in Showdown. It ends up failing far more often than it doesn't, even if this year it's kind of been something that's worked out a bunch of times. I don't really like playing chalk defenses. And my feeling here is we already have the Broncos defense projected for a lot of ownership. I'm seeing a lot of people talking about playing the Broncos defense. And then you also have Jonathan Taylor not in the mix. This could be one of these situations where the defense ends up being like 25-30% owned, and that's something I think kind of has limited upside generally.
So I'm generally a fan of playing defense. I know a lot of sharp players are kind of in line with you in don't like playing defenses in general. I guess you're making a more nuanced about this slate in particular. You don't love the defenses. It's not a slate that I'm like especially targeting any defense. I think the Niners were actually a great defense on the last slate. This slate, I don't think that either defense is really like a must play, but I think I'll probably be close to the field on defense. I like them in part just because of the lineups they allow me to construct, to leave salary on the table, to have defense versus quarterback, do some things where you can get more unique by playing defenses. But I also think we also have to talk about upside in a nuanced way with Showdown, because upside is not really about how many points position a player or defense can score. You don't need 40 points to have upside. 20 points from a spot that's only costing you 4,000 is upside because it allows you to have better players elsewhere in your lineup. So I think that there is some upside there. I think that the upside is kind of underrated for kickers and defenses in general. But I see your point. And, it's not my favorite spot on today. I'm not like forcing in the defenses. My guess is I'll be around the field. I wanted to correct myself. I said Paris Campbell was not that active in the last game. And then I was questioning myself because I was like, but I really liked him earlier. No, he leads the Colts in routes run so far this year. So that was somebody else did not play. And actually, I think it was KJ Hamler. I was getting them mixed up. Paris Campbell has been very involved, has not been targeted. He's been targeted just 11 times so far, but the routes run suggest to me that he's probably going to be targeted more frequently at some point. So at 3,600, right around 10% projected ownership right now, Paris Campbell looks great to me.
Yeah, I think that as far as cheap players that aren't picking up that much ownership go, we do have them being a little bit overowned right now in our projections. But at the same time, too, a lot of it is because Phillip Lindsay rates out as the best value play by such a wide margin that basically any other value play ends up being negatively leveraged. But one of the ones that does look pretty decent here is actually Brandon Mcmanus, the kicker for the Broncos, who a couple of things going in his favor. Number one, the Broncos offense has stalled out a whole bunch this year. And then point two, also, it's one of the rare times that we actually see a kind of narrative that makes sense for a kicker, which is the game's being played at altitude. That is massively beneficial for kickers, and especially on some of the long field goal attempts where we've seen Denver in the past be more willing to let Mcmanus kick long field goals when he is at altitude, just because he's more likely to make some of those long field goals. Also helps his fantasy score. So I actually do like Mcmanus as a value play in this game.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I think that Mcmanus is a solid value play in a game that is expected to be relatively low scoring. That makes it more likely that defenses and kickers get there. I also want to say somebody in chat just asked about Hinton. So Hinton is not on the inactives list. He just was not called up to the active roster. He had been on the practice squad, and he had already been called up to the active roster 3 times. And that's the maximum number of times you can call up a player from the practice squad without activating them to signing them to the active roster. So he was just not signed to the active roster, so he won't be playing tonight.
Yeah, so that's the clarification on the Kendall Hinton situation. Another super chat here from Melissa Harvey. Hey guys, my usual question: who are the must-haves for DK cash games? All right, so for me, Russell Wilson is the number one pay-up option to have. I don't really have too many qualms about that. And then as far as value options go, I would say Nahim Heinz and Phillip Lindsay. And then you kind of have the space to pay up for whoever you want. But Russell Wilson as the pay up option, mid-range Nahim Heinz, and then punt value Phillip Lindsay, I think should be in cash games today as well. Do you disagree with any of that, Neil, or is there somebody else you would add to the mix?
Yeah, so Phillip Lindsay just looks too good to not play in a cash game setting on DraftKings. I agree with you there. You said Russell Wilson. I think I'm probably on the same page as you with Russ as well. I'm just right now, all I'm doing is I'm sorting by value on Fantasy Cruncher in the flex spot to see who grades out the best point per dollar. And then I'm just excluding players who have virtually no projection. And so Phillip Lindsay is at the top of that list, looks by far the best. Nahim Heinz looks great to me, and Russ. And then you could fit in Cortland Sutton, somebody along those lines probably as well in that lineup. So I think those are kind of the must-haves in cash.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. And if you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and shout out to No House Advantage, the sponsor of today's show. If you guys haven't signed up at No House Advantage, you're missing out for 2 reasons. First of all, there's a ton of overlay there. They've had a lot of contests this year that have overlaid in a pretty significant way. And that's a really easy way to take advantage of DFS and make money is if you have these contests, they're only filled halfway. That reduces the rake tremendously, if not just the site basically giving away money. So that's something that's been happening a lot at No House Advantage. It doesn't happen on a site like FanDuel or DraftKings. Also, if you sign up at No House Advantage and click on the link below, they're going to give you up to $50 bonus on your first deposit. So a little bit of free money that way. And then also you get to take advantage of some of the rake being basically rake free with the contest overlaying there in a pretty significant way to this point this season. So take advantage of that if you haven't signed up yet over at No House Advantage. Let's move on over to the Broncos side of the game. But first, did you have any other talking points from the Colts you want to bring up before we move on?
Oh, good question. Let me look just real quick, position by position. We talked about Deion Jackson, 1,600, I think is fairly interesting at 4.3% projected ownership on DraftKings, just because I think it would just take 1 touchdown to pay off that price tag. We talked about Nahim Heinz and Phillip Lindsay at length. I think we've covered all of the running backs, wide receivers. You could play Strachan in a couple lineups. He does not project all that well. Not a huge endorsement from me. We talked about Paris Campbell. I actually really like Paris Campbell. Sean V does not like Paris Campbell. So if you want to listen to Sean V's analysis, you can fade Paris Campbell. Alec Pierce, kind of interesting at 5,400, getting 14% projected ownership. Doesn't project particularly well, but only 14% owned. I think that he'll have some chances. Ashton Doolin, kind of in that same bucket. Doesn't project all that well for 4,600. Somebody I'll throw in a few lineups at 7% projected ownership. And then the tight ends, it's kind of a mess. So I think both teams have sort of messy tight end situations. I have some interest in Mo Alley Cox, though, at 4,800, 11% projected ownership. He's just such a big target in the end zone that I feel like he's always live to score a touchdown or two. So I'll take some shots on Mo Alley Cox. I would rank Kylan Granson as the number 2 tight end for me of the Denver tight ends. He projects okay, looking at around 10% ownership as well. And then Jelani Woods, kind of a long shot, more of a dart throw. He's 2,200, not going to have a ton of opportunities. I think he scored a touchdown last week, 1.7% projected ownership. So he scores another touchdown at 2,200. You're golden. I think that largely covers it.
Yeah, I just looked because I was like, boy, based on the take from Sean V, I think I should look up some of Paris Campbell's alternate receiving yards. The problem is he's not good enough for books to even list alternate receiving yards. So his over under was 20.5. I was hoping like maybe I get like maybe there's 10-1 on Paris Campbell to have 80 plus receiving yards and it could just be a troll bet. That would be funny, but they didn't even have that as an option. Got a couple more super chats to get to, as well as a question on our premium Discord channel. So here we have a question from Lucky. He's asking us for a rule question. Would you set a rule, max 1 receiver for Denver besides Sutton and Judy, or just max 2 Denver receivers? It's too restrictive for Showdown. I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you. We've got Sutton, we've got Judy. Let me see who's sort by projection. Sutton, Judy. Yeah, I kind of like Hamler is sort of interesting at 4,400. His projection doesn't look that great right now. I wonder if that is accounting for Kendall Hinton being out, but I think Hamler is an interesting play. So yeah, I would not set that rule. Montreal, Washington potentially in play. Yeah, I wouldn't set that rule.
Couple more super chats here. First from Sam Pierce. Thank you, Sam. Phillip Lindsay as the captain tonight. What are your thoughts? I like him more as utility play than a captain play. The captain spot, he's kind of neutrally owned, whereas he's fairly under-owned in the utility spot. And something else that kind of concerns me too is if you're playing Phillip Lindsay in the captain spot, I think there's going to be a lot of duped lineups with Phillip Lindsay at captain, because unless you're leaving thousands of dollars on the table, it stands to reason that a lot of the people that are captaining Phillip Lindsay have the same lineups with him at captain.
Yep, exactly right. Which is why I would say if you are using Phillip Lindsay at captain, do leave a couple $1,000s on the table just to avoid that. I was reading some research that Cody Main had done at ETR, and he was saying that people love jamming in these value plays at captain, but often you really just need a lot of points in the captain spot. So sometimes these value guys, he's probably not going to be the optimal captain if he puts up 8 fantasy points. You do need Phillip Lindsay probably to put up like at least 15 fantasy points to be, or maybe at least 12 to put up to be the optimal captain. So just you have to think about, is that within his range of outcomes? And I think it might be. I think that he's a reasonable captain. He looks very neutral, as you said, 4.7% projected ownership, 4.9% optimal. But also, as you said, I mean, that doesn't account for leaving salary on the table. So you leave salary on the table, it might make it less likely that he's optimal if you do leave 1,500 on the table, but it also probably means that he's going to be less owned in those kinds of lineups. So those are the considerations, but I'm going to be playing some Phillip Lindsay at captain for sure.
Super chat from Teddy Wayman is playing Melvin Gordon at MVP on FanDuel too risky. Thanks, guys. So to me, not only would I not say it's too risky, he's the second most owned MVP right now on FanDuel. He's going to be really popular in that spot. So it's not risky. You're actually going with a lot of the field there. And that's actually my concern with Melvin Gordon. It's not the risky factor. It's the, is he too popular factor in the MVP. One thing I will say, in single entry, where we generally see the best plays get even more owned, I think Russell Wilson is going to be massively owned in the MVP spot over on FanDuel in single entry. And in that case, I really would be fine with Melvin Gordon as your 1.5x multiplier guy.
Yeah, I like that call. He looks totally fine. He's one of the top projected plays on the slate. He doesn't need to he doesn't correlate with the quarterback at all or anything like that. So I think you can certainly play Melvin Gordon in the captain spot.
Next super chat from J Bravo 99. He's looking at our tools and looking at the FanDuel projections where Russ is by far the highest. That is true. Russell Wilson has the highest fantasy projection by like 3.5 points over any other player. Do we like him more with Sutton or with Judy to save money and then take back one with Alberto, or run it back alongside Lindsay? Yeah. So overall, I think Lindsay is a good value play. I prefer him on DraftKings to FanDuel, but if you need somebody in that price range, I do prefer Lindsay to Alberto over on FanDuel. But for the other part of his question, and I think this is a good time for us to also talk about some of the pass catching options for Denver. Who is your favorite pass catcher to pair with Russell Wilson today?
Yeah, so I'll just start by saying, so we're talking about Russ as the highest scorer. If you have him in the MVP spot on FanDuel, most of the time, I'm going to want at least 2 pass catchers with him. Phillip Lindsay is actually not a great pass catching back. I think that people assume he is because he's kind of a little guy, but he's he fits that mold, but he isn't a great pass catching back. He's kind of a pretty mediocre pass catching back. So he could catch a ball. I consider him when I make my groups. I consider him to be one of the potential pass catchers. But I think if you're playing Russ in the MVP spot, I'd probably want to have at least 2 potential pass catching options, and I'd prefer them to be wide receivers. But Alberto, we just don't know if he's going to have any role. He might see 0 snaps today, whereas Phillip Lindsay certainly a little bit safer, more likely to get some run. As far as who do I want to pair him with, I mean, I'd prefer if I can fit him in there, I'd prefer to pair him with Cortland Sutton. But also I like to leave some salary on the table. So Jerry Judy allows you to do that a little bit more. In a vacuum, my favorite receiver to pair him with would be Cortland Sutton. But if I'm trying to get different, sometimes you got to go a little bit cheaper, leave some salary on the table. I like Jerry Judy. I like KJ Hamler as well as a wide receiver who I'm going to be using on both sites, just who isn't getting a ton of ownership and who I think could have a much bigger opportunity without Kendall Hinton in the lineup.
Yeah, so I haven't asked you specifically about Russell Wilson because I kind of feel like we've talked about him to this point in terms of he's, to me, the safest overall pay-up option. He projects the best. He's the number one guy to get to at the top end. He's the player I'm going to get the most exposure to. Do you have any alternate takes about Russell Wilson? Are you also going to be playing a lot of him?
Yeah, no alternate takes. Russell Wilson looks like one of the best plays on the slate. We've got him projected for 13% ownership in the captain spot, 16% optimal. Positive leverage there. We've got him projected for 51% ownership in the util spot, 57% optimal. Positive leverage there. So I'm going to have plenty of Russell Wilson in my lineups. Again, even more so on DraftKings than on FanDuel. If I play him in that captain spot, I am likely to pair him with multiple pass catchers. I'm not forcing that as a rule in my in Fantasy Cruncher, as you saw if you watched my Fantasy Cruncher videos. I'm not forcing 2 receivers with Russ just because he does have some rushing upside. He's shown some rushing upside in the past. He could, score a touchdown on the ground, but he doesn't have a ton of rushing upside. So I do prefer to have him with multiple pass catchers if I have him in the captain spot.
Yeah, I think that definitely does make sense in those lineups that have Russell Wilson, either as the captain on DK or MVP over on FanDuel. Now, how are we going to handle Melvin Gordon and the running back situation for the Broncos? So Gordon is almost certainly going to be the running back who gets the bulk of the carries, barring injury or anything weird happening. But how much of the workload do you expect from him? Like, how much is Mike Boone going to be involved? Is Melvin Gordon just the guy, in your opinion?
I kind of think so. I think that Melvin Gordon is the clear RB1 here, and I could be totally wrong because, showing how they've used Melvin Gordon with Javonte Williams, I think anybody watching would say that Javonte Williams was the more talented back and should have been, the RB1 and Melvin Gordon the clear RB2, and they kind of gave them relatively even splits. So maybe they do just like to split their running backs, and I could be completely reading the situation wrong, but I don't know that they're going to trust Mike Boone to the same extent that they had trusted Melvin Gordon as the backup. So my expectation would be that Melvin Gordon is a pretty clear RB1 here, and that Mike Boone is more like a traditional RB2 behind a closer to a workhorse back. Like I'm not expecting Melvin Gordon to get 25, probably not 20 carries here, but my guess is that he'll get, 14, something like that. And Mike Boone will probably just get a handful. I could be totally wrong though.
So the chat is going crazy right now. So before, and maybe I missed something. You might have accidentally before Neil said that Lindsay was on the Broncos and not the Colts, but also the super chat we got was asking us about if Phillip Lindsay is a good run back on the other side of the game. So that was what but tell the people, what team Phillip Lindsay's on so that they'll stop asking you what team he plays on.
Oh yeah. Okay. I misread the super chat. Yes, I do know that Phillip Lindsay is now on the Colts. I mentioned in the article, great revenge spot for Phillip Lindsay. I think I said that. I know that he's on the Colts now. I got confused by the super chat.
We got a couple more super chats here. First from I Ellingson. Can I captain Neil's amazing beer and print? I think he meant pint. Maybe he meant print. What is Minnesota Timberwolves, and what kind of beer are you drinking?
So this is Blue Moon Light. I prefer regular Blue Moon, but this is what we had in the fridge. So it's actually 2 beers, giant Stein.
There you go. Look, bragging. They got 2 beers in here. People think it's only 1, but it's actually 2. Next super chat from Jay. Boone and Gordon in the same lineup. I wouldn't make rules against it, but I'm certainly not going to prioritize it. Here's the main reason, though. I don't like Mike Boone as a play today. He's picking up a bunch of ownership. He's also fairly expensive. The main reason that I'm saying no to this, I'm not going to set a rule to not play them in the same lineup. I just don't like Boone that much as a play on this slate.
Yeah, I think that's fine. And Boone is 6,200, Melvin Gordon 8,800. So you kind of need a significant amount from both of them. But again, I've said this in my article. I like playing a couple running backs from the same team together. I like it less when they are both more expensive. And Boone is not really, priced like a true RB2. He's priced more like a running back who's going to get some decent volume. So I'm with you. It's not my favorite play in the world, but also it's probably not something a lot of people will do. So you need a little bit. It's kind of thin in terms of likely outcome, but it's also going to be very underutilized. So I'm going to have some lineups, I'm sure, that have both of them in there, but it's not something that I love the way I do sometimes to get a cheaper running back to mix in there.
Yeah. And then also one other thing I'm going to mention about Melvin Gordon is overall, I'm going to have lineups with him. I think that he's a fine play. I like other pay up options just better overall for this slate, though. I like Russell Wilson better, Cortland Sutton, Matt Ryan, Michael Pittman. So these are guys that I do prefer to pay up to before getting to Melvin Gordon. Are there any other running backs for Denver today that you think we should be thinking about, maybe outside of Mike Boone and Melvin Gordon?
Yeah, so I think those are the clear top 2. Divine Ozigbo, you were laughing when I brought him up earlier, and I wasn't sure if you were laughing at me or laughing at chat, but we've got Divine Ozigbo at 0.1. All of the above. Divine Ozigbo at 0.1% projected ownership. Latavius Murray is not playing. So Divine Ozigbo is he's the third running back who's available. I think they just have the 3 running backs available. So likely to be in there if there is garbage time, could get in there without garbage time. $200 would not take a whole lot to pay off that price tag. So I think I'm going to take some shots on Divine Ozigbo. Somebody said earlier that they hear me talking about these players, and what they hear is I already won the millie, so I can play these plays, and you probably shouldn't. And that's not entirely. I think that if you're playing 30, 40 lineups, I'd consider one Divine Ozigbo. He's not somebody I'm going way overboard on, but he's not somebody that I'd probably play in my first 20 lineups. But in a 150 set, no matter which contest you're playing, I think that you can take some shots in Divine Ozigbo.
I've got some logic for you, Neil. The reason you're able to play those guys isn't because you won the Millie Maker. The reason you won the Millie Maker is because you're willing to take shots on those guys. Like, that's really the way to think about it. We're like, before, somebody asked us about Phillip Lindsay as being a potential captain play. And, points per dollar is at the end of the world. No, but it's really hard to build a unique lineup with Phillip Lindsay as the captain. The idea that somebody's going to win a solo $1 million with Lindsay as the captain today, I think is fairly unlikely, right? So it's not just what the best players are overall for the slate, but it's also, if you win with these players, what are the percentage odds of you winning, and how much can you win with those players? Because realistically, you could have a showdown season where you only profit on one slate by just playing totally off the walls plays. But if the one slate you win nets you $1 million, it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah, exactly right. I'm willing to take some of those long shots, and I was before I won the millie. So yeah, I think that you kind of need to, if you're going to, especially on these showdown sites, you need to get a little bit weird. And one of the ways you can get weird is just playing guys that nobody else is playing. And I think Divine Ozigbo is potentially that guy tonight. Anton Murphy, by the way, I'm with you. Hamler, legit captain play tonight. I'm going to take some shots on Hamler as well.
And now let's talk about those pass catchers for the Denver Broncos. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Judy, just large field tournaments in general. Do you have a preference between these guys? I think both of them do look like pretty strong options, and they are 2 players that I would like to be overweight to.
Yeah, so I think my preference is probably Cortland Sutton, but I'm with you. I guess Jerry Judy is significantly cheaper, and because I'm leaving more salary on the table, I don't want to say that my preference is Cortland Sutton and then look at my exposures and I'm way over on Jerry Judy, which I think is there's potential for that just because of the amount of salary that I like to leave on the table. But I like both. Honestly, they're kind of similar in terms of our boom bust odds versus ownership. We've got Sutton at 14% captain ownership, 15% optimal, 44% util ownership, 49% optimal. Looks great. I'm going to want to be above the field. Whether I end up there is another question. Jerry Judy, 9.4% captain ownership, 10% optimal, 36% util ownership, 40%. So both of them just have positive leverage in both spots. They're different price points. So I would recommend mixing and matching. I don't really have a strong take. If you're making one lineup, it kind of comes down to how much salary do you have? Are you going to be able to leave salary on the table with Cortland Sutton in there? If so, then sure, play Cortland Sutton. Otherwise, I'd maybe pivot down to Jerry Judy and leave some salary on the table.
I don't know what I dislike more, the porn bots or the people that come out and say they've got the game streaming when there's not even, they're not, like, it doesn't make sense. The game isn't even on. Like, what's going to happen when you click on that link? I mean, I'm sure computer viruses, but easy to mute that in the chat. But let's talk now about the other pass catching options for Denver. I know you brought up KJ Hamler. What else makes sense to you from Denver, if anything, in large field tournaments?
Yeah, so KJ Hamler is definitely a guy that's going to interest me. I'm just refreshing my fantasy cruncher now to see if we've got an updated ownership projection, because I think that will kind of sway me, and I think that will change based on Kendall Hinton being out. Maybe they just haven't changed the Kendall Hinton number and these numbers are accurate, but KJ Hamler is definitely the number one outside of Sutton and Judy. So Sutton and Judy, the clear top two. KJ Hamler, I do have a lot of interest in at 4,400 as the presumptive number 3 wide receiver. He was the presumed number 3 wide receiver coming in and just has not been doing it. So maybe they've written him off. Maybe they don't like KJ Hamler, and this could be totally wrong, but I think that he's kind of talented. 4,400. If he comes in at 10% owned, I'm going to be above the field, I would expect, on KJ Hamler. I think that you can play some Tyree Cleveland, assuming that he wasn't on the inactives list, was he? He was ruled out last week.
But by the way, Hinton is not in the ownership projections right now. It's just it's a bug in Fantasy Cruncher where it's just left up there. But okay, we don't have Hinton in our ownership projections right now, and Hamler still at the 10.3% utility spot.
All right, let me look up Broncos inactives. I just want to make sure that I'm not missing somebody here. All right, so Jalen Virgil is out, Latavius Murray. Okay, so we don't have, so Tyree Cleveland is potentially, he's active tonight. So I guess Tyree Cleveland is somebody you could consider playing. We've got a 1 fantasy point projection for Tyree Cleveland. So not a strong play, definitely a long shot play that I'm not going to have a ton of. He's not even one of my favorites among the long shot plays. My guess is I'll be above the field, but above the field would probably be 2% across 150 lineups. I don't think I'm going to get a ton more than that. And then Montrell Washington, kind of the same boat. I think I'll probably be above the field is projected for 0.7% ownership. I think that I would have maybe one of each of these guys. If I played 20 lineups and in 150, I'll have a few of each of them. I don't think I'm going to get to like double digits on these guys. They just don't project that well, and I don't really see the role there. But so of the Denver wide receivers, I think KJ Hamler is the one that I am most likely to play a good amount. And then I'll mix in a little bit of Montrell Washington and Tyree Cleveland and see if things get weird.
And then as far as Chase McLaughlin goes as a kicker option for Denver, I mean, I misspoke there as well. So we've got a Mcmanus, the kicker for Denver, brought him up before as potential value play. We didn't really talk about McLaughlin as a kicking option for the Colts. What I wanted to say there is I strongly prefer Mcmanus as a value play over McLaughlin. Do you have a lean between the two as kickers?
Honestly, I just play kickers where I get them. So we've got Mcmanus is more expensive and projects better. But yeah, Mcmanus projects almost a full fantasy point better than McLaughlin. So I guess he'd be my preference. I'm probably more likely to get to more of Mcmanus than McLaughlin. And he's the veteran. I mean, he's been a great kicker for a long time now. So probably a little bit more trusted than Chase McLaughlin.
All right, we got a couple of super chats here. We'll answer those, and then we'll turn it over to Live Before Lock. So don't go anywhere, guys, because we got Live Before Lock on right after us. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. First, a super chat from Mark Desio. Neil, on average, how many different captains do you have per Showdown slate? That's an interesting question.
That is an interesting question. I don't think I know the answer, but across all, so I'm just going to look through the crunch that I ran earlier. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. From the crunch that I ran 150 crunch. My guess is that on average, I probably averaged like 12. I would guess that I get a little bit more than that on average, but a lot of those are players that I have in like one captain lineup. So it's not players that I get a ton of, but probably in that like 10 to 12 range typically.
And the final super chat we have here to close it out, Colin Sanders. He says he has Conklin, Alley Cox, and Granson. Who does he start this week? All right, let me look at our projections for the week and see If we have, off the top of my head, it's Conklin.
Me too. I want to see if he played the same number or ran the same number of routes this past weekend as he had been. I have not actually looked at Tyler Conklin yet.
Yeah. Conklin's actually been legit for fantasy this year, mostly because, well, the Jets suck. They have to throw the ball a ton, but also he's just been involved in the passing game. Like you said, he's run a whole bunch of routes. So it's something like double-digit fantasy points the first couple of games of the year.
81% snaps last week. So the snaps are still there at the very least. So I think it's probably Conklin for me.
Yep. I'm going to say Conklin as well after looking at some of our projections. So we're all caught up on those now. Guys, thank you very much for watching. Don't go anywhere because Live Before Lock is coming up next. Also, don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck tonight.
It's Thursday night, which means one thing. It's no longer Wednesday, and we're going to be submitting our picks versus the house on No House Advantage. Now, yesterday we made our picks for the Pick'em contest, which is a tournament-style game where the more player props you get right, you go up in the standings. But today, we're going versus the house, where you try to make up to 5 picks, and if you're right with those 5 picks, you're going to net up to 20 times your money. So that is what we're going to be doing today. And I know the people at No House, they're refreshing their browser waiting for us to make our pick. What are they going to give us this week? And I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to start directly where we started yesterday. A lot of my picks today, they're going to run kind of right in line with what I gave you yesterday. I'm going to start with Matt Ryan passing yards. I'm going to take the over. We know there's no Jonathan Taylor in this game. Hell, they couldn't even run when they had Jonathan Taylor, which means you're going to see a lot of Nahim Heinz. And what does that mean? A lot of dump offs, a lot of checkdowns, a lot of screens, wheel routes, short passing game. They set this number very low, 230. If the Colts are going to move the ball, it's going to be one way, and that's through the air. And guess what? Do you know who's top 5 in passing yards this year? Oh, I know. It's disgusting, but it's the truth. It's Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan is a top 5 quarterback in passing yards. So can he get to 230? It's the only way it's going to happen. They could get crushed in this game. He could still hit 230. They have to pass to move the ball tonight. It's not like Matt Ryan is running anywhere, so give me the over on Matt Ryan passing yards. Then I'm going to look at his receivers, because if I believe he's going to go over 230, it's going to have to come from somewhere, and they really only have one good receiver, one reliable receiver coming off a down week. So give me the over on Michael Pittman receiving yards. I know it's relatively high, but I don't believe someone like Pittman, who picked up this year right where he left off last year, is going to have 2 bad games in a row, especially in a game where there's no Taylor. And I'm pretty sure Phillip Lindsay ain't running this ball down the throat of the Denver Broncos, although he may feel comfortable on that field. And then also on top of Pittman, I'm looking at, well, who's the second favorite target of Matt Ryan? Well, I'm looking at a guy who had 6 targets, 4 catches last week, 5 targets, 3 catches the week before that. Give me a little bit of Alec Pierce to go over that low receiving total. I mean, if it was a little higher, maybe not, but he seems to be the guy who Matt Ryan has that second semi-connection with, the old Mohamed Sanu connection. So give me Alec Pierce to hit that over on receiving. Now, I mentioned Nahim Heinz taking a lot of dump-offs from Matt Ryan in this game, and if they showed us a Nahim Heinz prop that had to deal with receiving, receptions, reception yards, oh, I'd take the over. 4, 5, 6, 20 yards, 30 yards, 40 yards, but the only thing they're showing us is rushing yards.
Oh my God.
Did you hear what I said? Oh,
I don't know.
Producer Jordan. God, this cat. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to NFL Live Before Lock, presented by No House Advantage. I'm Eric Lindquist. Excited to be talking through this Denver Indy game. I was kind of apprehensive about this game, but the more I build Showdown lineups, I'm starting to enjoy it. If you guys are enjoying the show previous to us, and if you're going to enjoy this one, hit that like button, subscribe button, and notification bell. Goes a long way for us here at the channel. I like to be back with half of the law firm today. My dude, if I had to pick one of you two, I mean, it's either the wilderness manimal himself, Makachevsky. I'm happy to have Matt Savoca. He's the preferred part of the law firm. Yeah, you heard me. Damn down with you, college football. How you doing?
I was going to say, like, if you need to know somebody's college immediately, like an NFL player's college, their alma mater, you have found the wrong person.
You went to Central Florida.
Yeah.
He played football there. He is very We got to beat the efficiency of the number and beat closing line value.
Hey,
Is that pretty? I tried.
that was a decent. Hey,
I've never hashed it out. I have to work it out. I need the glasses. Does a lot of the work for you.
What's up, guys? I'm thrilled to be here. This Colts Broncos game looks pretty ugly on paper, kind of a defensive battle, but I kind of agree with you. There's some punt plays that make this kind of exciting. And obviously, I think what's really exciting too is that there are these players at high salaries that have lots of pathways to failure. So if you want to say, I'm fading X star player because of these two reasons, I totally buy it tonight.
You don't have a Cooper Kupp on today's slate. Like, I don't know what everybody did for the Cooper Kupp slate, but I had 100% Cooper Kupp in the captain spot because I didn't know what else to do with my life. And I didn't play San Francisco defense because I'm a fish, but it is what it is. There are a lot of paths for this game. I will say, how in God's green earth does Indy score, but we'll get there. I'm excited to talk about this one. Anything stand out to you on inactives? We generally do that on the Sunday show when we cover the main slate. Anything that you really want to talk about in terms of inactives that came out, about half an hour ago now?
Yeah, Shaq Leonard being out for Indianapolis is big. That team is just a significantly better team when he's on the field. And certainly, obviously, the defense is better. He is the core of the defense, the captain of the defense. And so the things they can do defensively are limited. Now, I wanted to get your gauge on this. Honestly, I think we should do this with every one game slate. What are the chances? Let's put it in terms of like chances, probability, that this game shoots out, meaning goes over a touchdown over its total to the point where we have a real offensive battle.
You want me to Russell gauge this?
Yeah, Russell.
Okay.
I mean, just off the top of your head, no numbers needed. Like we're just getting a feel for the game environment.
I mean, just in this analytical mind of mine at this given point in time, how about we go with 12%?
Okay, cool. We're kind of on the same page.
50 plus points, I would say like 12%.
I'm going to go with like 20% as well. Okay. We're kind of on the same page here. And now take that as your baseline, guys. That still means 1 in 5 times or 1 in 7 times this game goes to 50 points. It means there's a lot of ways this can go. I do think that there is a path to success, especially for the Denver offense. With this Indy banged up offense, I'm just not so sure. It really comes down to, can Matt Ryan actually carry a team in 2022?
Did you watch season 1 of Stranger Things?
Oh, of course.
Your lamp is communicating with you.
Oh, it's on a candlelight setting.
Ooh,
it is doing its own thing.
Gotcha.
We're living that automated life. I can do all sorts of stuff actually with this.
Can you do it from your phone? Are you going to change it again? I can do
it right here. I can like hit it with like blue or green.
Oh,
red. Cycle through.
The car.
Yeah, so that's that's football for you. Back to the den.
Wow. The production value is higher and higher on these Stokastic streams, I must say. With the help of Jordan Klein behind the virtual glass, I get to hang out with my boy tonight. Very excited. Yeah, you and me celebrating the end of MLB season. Only one way to do that. It's participating in some debauchery. So we're going to do that together this fine evening. Open a nice bottle of red and run back the Greg Ehrenberg, if you know what I mean. Let's get to it, shall we? Quarterback position, and there's 2 of them. I know they talked about it on the last show. We're going to talk about it again on this show because there's only 2 of them. They're Matt Ryan, they're Russell Wilson. I would say both underachievers. Russell Wilson still got there from a fantasy perspective last time out. Still didn't look all that good to me. Taking a lot of sacks right now, at least 3 sacks in 3 straight games. How are you feeling about Russell Wilson and Matt Ryan today?
So obviously, if you just in a vacuum, salary wasn't a thing, you probably say, give me Russell Wilson, even with the struggles. Yeah. 17th in the NFL in pass attempts. He's still throwing deep. He's still doing that Russell Wilson thing. It just isn't quite landing like it has been, at least consistently. 3rd in the NFL in deep attempts, 9th in red zone attempts. At least he's getting there. But 21st in QBR, 12th in expected points added, And honestly, I just see kind of a couple halves of good performances. You know, we're saying he got there last week. He still just had 237 yards on 284 air yards. That's okay. Considering the weaponry he has in Sutton and Judy, I'd like to see more. And you know, we've seen people in chat already talking about how, you know, there could be some shutdown corners that he's got to worry about. But honestly, I think this is Russell Wilson's game to lose. If you're looking at the most likely outcome, Russell Wilson should be the most dominant force on the field. Let's see if he can actually do it.
Stephon Gilmore is good at football, but guess what else? So is Cortland Sutton. Like, it's going to be a lot of one-on-one, and it's going to be fun to watch, but you can't just say, oh, I'm not going to play Cortland Sutton or Russell Wilson because of this. I mean, how many times have we seen in DFS? That's just a bad idea to factor it in.
100%.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
Glad that we're on the same page there. Matt Ryan, I will say, when you look at the board, we have the top showdown and single game plays tool. Awesome job by our data team putting that together. I do see Russell Wilson being somebody who shows up a little bit more than his captain optimal ownership. So I will ask you this. If you had to play one of them on DraftKings in the captain, Matt Ryan, 9,600, Russell Wilson, 10-4, who would you prefer to be captaining?
At captain, I kind of think Russell Wilson is worth getting up there.
Yeah.
I just think the defense in Denver is the way they win games. So when it goes wrong for Matt Ryan, it goes catastrophically wrong. So when you're spending a lot of salary, I just think there's a ton of risk of ruin. I'm not saying I'm not playing a quarterback in this, in a one game slate. Of course, I'm getting the lineups with Matt Ryan, but I think the extra salary is worth it. I mean, even at the captain spot, we're looking at just a median outcome, about 6-point differential between the two quarterbacks. That matters when we're looking for the highest total score.
Agreed. Cool. Glad we covered the quarterback position. It's always kind of the easiest thing that I think we do on these shows, because you basically look at these two, and if you captain them, I think on DraftKings, it's going to be very strange for me to not have two of their pass catchers, or at least running backs in some capacity. You get Nahim Heinz, who I think brings an interesting wrinkle to the Matt Ryan combos. And then with Russell Wilson, Melvin Gordon, obviously you can play alongside of it, but I'm still going to get to two pass catchers if I captain him for DraftKings purposes. On FanDuel, only 5 players are going to show up in your roster. I'm much more likely to just get one pass catcher from either one of them in the MVP,
Sure.
plus half-point PPR. Makes a lot of sense to get to either one of them in bulk, correct?
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. I mean, honestly, the player who I think can bring two with him is Russell Wilson. If you're making a ton of lineups, you do it with both. But honestly, I don't know how important stacking really is going to be tonight. I think it's going to be just like a defensive slog.
Yeah, I'm with you. Also, somebody saying exactly what I think, Danny Green, the only way the Colts produces through the air. I mean, if you're rushing it 20 times for 40 yards with Jonathan Taylor, Nahim Heinz, this is a great segue, running back position. It has gotten very, very interesting on this slate. Broncos, Colts. I want to start with Nahim Heinz because I'm getting a little bit of mixed feedback from people. If you look at a number of different sites where you look at the projected rushes, and that is something that you can bet nowadays, 9 is kind of the prevailing number everywhere. He did not exceed that number one time last season. Jonathan Taylor will do that. But even in 2020, only 2 times, same coaching regime, did he get over 9 touches running the football. I also get worried seeing some of the schemes and some of the preseason chatter we had about Nahim Heinz coming into the season. Oh, he's going to play in the slot. He's going to be a pass catcher. We're going to figure things out. He's been relatively uninvolved in this offense. And do you think that continues today? Or is Nahim Heinz somebody that you want to be playing at his current ownership?
I feel like you kind of have to get there. If you're playing a couple lineups, you kind of have to bet on Heinz, because I do think he has the first crack at being productive in the backfield. I kind of think the most likely thing that happens is no one is productive in the Colts backfield because they just kind of split a middling amount of production. But Denver, as you might expect, they're pretty darn good defensively all over. If there is one area where they've been kind of closer to league average, it's actually against the running back position. In schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, they're 11th best in the NFL. So okay, but nothing near what they're like against opposing receiving cores. In yards per carry allowed, they're 15th, 20th in Football Outsiders DVOA. So whoever does get the between the tackles carries, whether it's Heinz or Deion Jackson, I think there is a little bit of sneaky upside. And if they can find a couple holes, quite literally, I think they can change the outlook of this game where, as I said before, I think Denver can try to control things. But if Indy can run without Taylor, that changes the game script immediately.
That was your PP. That was yours.
What did I say? Oh, what did I say?
Just play the tape. Play the tape. We'll play it back.
Okay,
it'll be fun. You'll enjoy it. How involved do you think Phillip Lindsay is tonight for the Colts? It's such a loaded question. Yeah.
He's a Neil Orfield showdown special.
Sure
is what he is. Like, he's going to play enough where at his salary, like absolutely playing him at what is he, 400 right now? You got to go try to do it, especially right now. Honestly, we're pretty bullish on him, maybe a little overly bullish in terms of projections, but if he's going to be the secondary back, and right now I've seen it different. I've seen some reports saying Jackson is going to get the first crack. Lindsay might get the first crack. My real concern is that they all get about 8 touches and it's just a disaster. But right now, if you're looking at our tools, I mean, Lindsay looks really, really solid. Highly positive leverage score.
Yeah, it's gonna be fascinating. Revenge spot. He has the higher projection at some places in terms of rushing attempts, seeing 9.5 as a prevailing number as opposed to Heinz's 9. I mean, that kind of speaks to the narrative where I do think Heinz is somebody that they've never given a large workload to, because I don't know if it's something he's built to necessarily do. I don't know how to factor that in. I never played football. I simply just analyze it and look at the numbers, and I see rushing attempts where he's exceeded that number of 9 twice. I do think he's going to have to get a lot of his production out of the air, and so we'll see where that comes into line. But Phillip Lindsay, very, very intriguing to me. Which one of the two would you be more likely to captain on this slate?
Between Heinz and Lindsay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
In a large field tournament, I think Lindsay is a very intriguing pick.
I agree.
I don't know. I think there is a ceiling there, but I think it's a low percentile outcome for Heinz. There's definitely a floor, especially because he's going to be involved in the receiving game.
For me, I'm just thinking about the goal line. Like, Phillip Lindsay's a lot more built to handle goal line touches than Heinz is. But maybe that's just me. That's not something you can back up.
Both Jackson and Lindsay are. I mean,
yeah, Jackson could be a big pain in my ass today.
He hasn't gotten any work at all, so he's really just a speculative pick.
Special teamer.
Yeah. But, one thing I will say is Phillip Lindsay was kind of touted when he was in Denver as a pass catching back. He was literally awful as a pass catcher. He can't do it. So if Phillip Lindsay gets there, it's because he got there rushing between the tackles. Not saying it's impossible, but I don't think that's actually the most likely outcome. Do you guys? I'm just not sure.
Well, let's go to the other side here, because we get Melvin Gordon III. PFF has him rated with a 44 offensive grade. Do you know what that is amongst all running backs this season, my friend, out of 57 total running backs?
I'm going to guess 55.
57th.
Oh, no.
Dead last. I am very uncomfortable with this slate because of Melvin Gordon's existence. He fumbled last week. He got benched. They were in come from behind mode. He's one of the worst pass catching backs in football. Also this season, a 29.4 receiving grade. Dead last amongst 58 total running backs there. The former Badger. Yeah, I'm just, I would much rather he was not a thing, but he is a thing today. I have an uncomfortable amount because this is Showdown.
Yeah.
1, how much are you getting to? And 2, do you prefer him like I do to be playing him just extremely? I'm just playing him in the flex. I'm not going to play captain shares of Melvin Gordon today.
You can play captain Melvin Gordon. Volume is king in fantasy football, and he's probably going to get volume, but there is nothing pointing to him being good right now. Unbelievable in college.
Yeah.
Unreal in college.
Yep.
Oh, I want to give a
unreal with the Chargers.
Yeah. He had
at times
slow start where he didn't score for a whole while. Then he had I digress. This is a little shout out to just advanced analytics in general, because the Colts are second in the NFL, second best in the NFL in yards per carry, but they're 32nd in DVOA, Football Outsiders defensive value over average. And then when you look at schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, they're kind of middle of the road. So I do think there's some upside here. This is another team where I'm worried that 2 players split about 8 to 10 touches each. One of them has to fall in the end zone in order to be solid. I think Gordon is very fadeable at captain. I understand where you're going there, but the volume, again, it's king in fantasy football, and we only have so many bell cow running backs on a 1-game slate.
I'm just trying to trim some of the fat. I know he's got 14 rushing attempts. For me, it's just simply looking at what is his ownership going to be in that captain spot. Right now, 10.4%. and we have him at 6.9% optimal, I am just going to play 0. That is my big stand. Going over-owned in the captain, according to everything here at Stokastic. It follows my logic for this game too, where I just don't want to be getting to any of him there. He just creates a lot of issues for me in terms of what I want this. If he goes nuts, I'm not going to win money. But if Melvin Gordon III goes nuts in this game, I am okay losing. Like, I'm okay losing to captain Melvin Gordon. I'll live with it. So that's my big stand. I will get to some Mike Boone, once upon a time, Minnesota's finest. I miss you.
I mean, yeah, you can get there. We really have no idea what we're getting out of him. But here's what was good to see. In week 3, he played 14% of snaps. That was the first time all season he had been over 10%. Week 4, obviously the injury to Williams happens mid-game, but he gets over 31% snap share. So he was starting to trickle in to the game plan before Williams went out. That's a good thing. He still just has 11 receiving yards on 2 receptions this season. You know, we got to keep things, we got to contextualize things. We've seen 6.2 yards per touch, 6.5 true yards per carry on essentially 0 volume. I'm kind of excited to see this player. And if you're just talking about comparing his ceiling to salary-based expectations, it's pretty good. But I am set. I am set on DraftKings to see him a little bit up to the point where it actually doesn't look good, especially at the flex spot. But I think it's a contrarian play to get up to be contrarian. When we don't really know what's going to happen in this backfield, it's not a terrible choice.
Any other super punt running back that you might want to be taking some shots on? We kind of alluded to him a little bit earlier. Whether you want to just, I mean, Lindsay, he's projecting out so well that it's hard to find my way to any Ozigbo, or from the Denver side. Indiana, don't really see any kind of a need to take shots with, Deion Jackson. I don't need to be doing any of this. Large field tournaments, sure, they could end up being the guy. If you made me pick one, I'd probably go to a little bit more Jackson, but I'm playing 20 lineups on DK. I'm playing 150 on FanDuel. I'm going to get a smattering on FanDuel, but nothing noticeable at all.
That makes sense to me. Guys, just like Neil was talking about, this is not a player you need to get to if you're just playing a handful or 10 or so lineups. Just not someone you need to worry about. Deion Jackson is one where if I had 10, I'd definitely play him in 1. I know that's a little bit bullish, but what do we really know about Indy? Divine Ozigbo, that's one where unless you're playing 150, something like that, I really don't think you need to get there.
Yeah, he's at least been with the team for a couple of weeks, so that makes sense. I'm with you. Anything else from running back that you want to cover? I think you did a pretty great job myself.
Yeah, we hit it.
Cool. Hit that like button while you're at it too. Hit it, then quit it or something. I don't know. Seems inappropriate. Don't want to go down that road. We're going to keep this professional here, and we're going to talk Stokastic tools and content. That's what we're going to do. Would you like 50% off your first week of Stokastic Plus? I bet you do. Would you like the top showdown tools? Would you like the projections? Would you like the ownership projections? Looking at the captain optimal percentages, the utility optimal percentages, finding the best leverage on today's slate, which exists with Captain Nahim Heinz in the utility spot. Interesting. I'm going to be getting to a little bit there. How can you not? But looking at all of the great things that we have here at Stokastic day in, day out, now is the time to take advantage of it. Use promo code Showdown Live. Yes, Showdown Live here, all caps, one word, in order to get it. We have DraftKings, FanDuel, Yahoo. We got you covered everywhere. No House Advantage, our sponsor. We have you covered with projections for that. Everything you could possibly want for the NFL season, we got here. We've got free articles on the site. We've got everything else that you want. If you want the tools, though, that really make you the money, sign up now, 50% off that first week. Stop guessing, start winning. Join us at Stokastic Plus today. All righty, to the wide receiver position. Let's start with the road Colts. That's how we do things here. And Michael Pittman Jr., he seems like he's good at football. Is he good enough at football to show up in 40% of your lineups like he's currently projected for on DK right now?
That's a whole lot. You know what? At the flex, he has a solid positive leverage. Slightly reduced leverage at the captain spot, but that doesn't, it's a wash, is what I'm really trying to say. He has ceiling potential here. I know he's going to see Surtain. I know Surtain is probably good, but it takes a while for us in terms of sample size to really know how good these cornerbacks are. I got nothing here between the lines that says he isn't. It's just that getting healthier after missing week 2. We saw a 92% snap share in week 3, 92% snap share again in week 4. So there's no concerns about lingering pain or playing in terms of playing time. And this is a player who consistently is top 25 in target share, despite kind of being on a low routes run schedule right now. He's 41st in routes run per game. That might have to do with part of his absences in the games right now.
That's why. Yep.
14th in fantasy points per game, 19th in expected fantasy points per game among all wide receivers right now. The opportunity value, especially without Taylor, should absolutely be there.
Yeah, he had a big week 1 and then pressure happened. And you're going to get some pressure in your face here too from the Denver side for Matt Ryan. Going to be very intriguing to watch that matchup. That offensive line needs to hold together. I think that could be the key difference. Not that that isn't the key difference in just about any football game. You give a quarterback who's somewhat functional, even Matt Ryan, very much so functional at this stage of his career, if he's getting time, just like most quarterbacks. If you're getting time, you're going to look really, really good. Best of luck to you this weekend, Kenny Pickett. That's kind of my major concern with him come Sunday. But I digress. We're talking Thursday night here. I'm serious. If you watch that Pittsburgh game, I tried to rewatch the second half just to get an idea of how much Pickett I can handle for the weekend. And oh boy, that Pittsburgh offensive line is bad. It is very, very bad.
Not a whole lot that's good that's on that Pittsburgh team.
Yeah, it's going to be, if Mike Tomlin can get, hasn't he gone like 500 for a zillion straight seasons or something? I saw some number about that the other day.
Yeah, he's got like an insane amount of non-losing seasons. I forget the exact stat.
Good luck this year, my friend. Other pass catchers, I think the next guy is Alec Pierce to talk about. You talk about low routes run. Another thing is they just kind of weren't running a lot of offensive plays. They weren't moving the ball. They're a bad offense. 37 total routes run, 11 targets back-to-back weeks. Seems decent. 37 routes run is what it was. So I'm looking at that. 26.3% air yard share. That's pretty decent. That's the highest on the team, including Michael Pittman, who was out, though, for the 1 week. So we got to say that. How do you feel about Alec Pierce emerging as from the grouping of him, Doolin, and Campbell?
Well, remember, Pierce missed the same week that Pittman missed well.
That's
week 2. So we can we don't have to adjust or contextualize their sample size really at all. Now, in targets per route run, Pierce doesn't look fantastic right now, but I do like the talent. Big bodied guy, 6'3", 208, upper percentile athletics. That's kind of what we have to lean on right now. He's got 13 total NFL targets in this game where the Colts are just grasping at straws in terms of skill position talent. It would be great if he stepped up. But again, we're talking about a Denver defense who is incredibly tough, 5th best in the NFL in passing yards per game allowed. In schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, they've been a little bit above average. Honestly, actually, they moved up to 3rd against wide receivers specifically after last weekend. So I do think one player is going to pop for Indy, but I am reluctant to double stack, even if I'm going super contrarian and playing Indianapolis Colts.
Yep. Let's ride. Best of luck to us. Any other wide receiver you really want to get overweight to from the Colts side?
I've always had a little soft spot for Paris Campbell.
Me too, and I hate it because it's more of a it's a soft spot that's really turning into a hard spot very quickly. I'm not excited about him. That also sounded terrible. That was bad. That was a pretty bad one too.
You can't. You have to save yourself sometimes.
No, there's really none of that. I'm my own worst enemy.
I can't believe we got so many great super chats. Someone won money.
I'm going to read them right now. We
got to talk Paris. No, we have to talk Paris Campbell.
We have to. That's what we're here for. So
Paris
text,
Campbell
member for 5 months. Monday Night Football. Also, we just hit 300 likes. You guys are the absolute best. Get that number north of 400. And maybe Matt Savoca will sing at the end of the stream, right? If we get over 400, will you give me like a little bar?
Just like something. I'll probably do something.
Get to 400. I'm telling you, this man, you guys don't even understand the greatness that is that voice. I can't wait. I tried to get you to do karaoke in Chicago. Huge fail. So text, member for 5 months. Our dude, good to see you. Monday Night Football turned $3.30 into $59 thanks to the law firm. I don't know where the law firm, I just came up with that last year because I don't know. I'm original, witty, and awesome.
I didn't say that, but
Jillian Sullivan, $1.99, best Millie captain. Thank you for all you do. Best Millie captain, Matt Savoca. And yes, I'm awesome. Goodbye.
Paris Campbell.
Oh no. Oh,
It's a millie captain.
So
a millie captain. We're talking about a player who
has
has enough snap share to catch 2 touchdowns, and no one is playing them. 66% snap share week 4 was actually the lowest he's seen. He's seen upwards of a 90% snap share on this team. Make it happen, Paris Campbell. It's a reasonable salary too.
Noah Levinson, $1.99. And then I answered his question in the chat. How many of my 20 lineups do I have for different captains? 4. I've got a pretty condensed captain pool for 20 lineups even. Sometimes you could spread it out across the board, but it's more about the overall construction, and I'm leaving salary on the table, I'll tell you that much. Matt M, I've had enough of Eric's toxic masculinity. You know, that is really something I get all the time, I must say. I'm definitely a bro, homie. Down with it? Cool. Let's continue on to the Denver side of the wide receiver category. And holy mother of God, Cortland Sutton's going to be popular today, no?
He's going to be popular. You can absolutely play him.
Yep.
Honestly, in our tools, he looks insanely good. Like a +5 leverage score at the flex position. A positive leverage score at the captain position. Cortland Sutton is one of those players who, if he comes out of the game with 145 yards and 2 touchdowns, you're not surprised. And there are very, very few people on this slate who you can say that about. He's 16th in total targets this year, 14th in target share, 9th in air yard share, and in expected fantasy points per game. He's probably the one who's actually kind of showing up in opportunity value. He's 11th among all wide receivers, 13th in fantasy points per game. So among all the turmoil with the Denver Broncos offense, the up and down nature of it, Cortland Sutton has been getting his. He's 7th in overall receiving yards. It could be a Judy week. Absolutely. But he is my favorite overall wide receiver. Notwithstanding salary, just taking it out of the equation, my favorite overall wide receiver on the slate.
Do you know any Ben Folds?
Yeah.
Judy, could anyone be loved anymore than I love you? Does it hurt you too? That's Ben Folds for you. Yes.
Judy. That one. Yeah.
I could play it on the piano for you later. But Either way, I'm telling you, we're going to have great times if you ever get out to LA. It's going to be piano bar vibes up in here in Toluca Lake. But I love that you knew that. Also, those are some bars and some pipes. Hit 400 likes so we get some Savoca singing up in this bitch. But yes, no, I'm absolutely rock this bitch. That's also Ben Folds.
Oh, that was good. That was
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I'm here to just like segue all the way through the rest of this. But Jerry Judy is a guy I'm making a very aggressive stand for. I feel like he's the one guy. So he had a 3.5 receiving prop at a number of places. It's up to 4. I want to look at what it is at No House Advantage. You guys should all skedaddle on over to No House Advantage while you're at it here too, because you know what? Overlay just barely half full right now out of 1,600 total entries for the Thursday Night Football Showdown contest. And Jerry Judy, I don't know why he's been as uninvolved. It's kind of like the Lockett Metcalf thing all over again from Seattle down here in Denver, where he's got 2 elite skill position wide receivers, and he's just preferring one, and it makes no sense. It was like DK Metcalf would just have eruption spots out of nowhere, but for the most part, it was Lockett, I feel like, over the course of the last year. Jerry Judy's going to come along for the ride. He's got a 4.5 reception prop over at No House Advantage today. That feels pretty efficient to me. Cortland Sutton at 5.5. So I'm just saying, if we're going to have 1 reception difference between the two, and I want to leave salary on the table and find ways to get different, leave salary on the table by going to Judy over Sutton.
I get that. The man is averaging 2.8 receptions a game right now.
It's not good.
It's not great. Like, we're betting on talent. Draft capital is high, but 5.3 targets per game, 2.8 receptions. Just stop the volume conversation right there. That is subpar, to say the least. And now you consider the salary at $7,800. I already know what our tools are going to say. It's one of those things where like you log in to Stokastic the first thing in the morning to see what the projections updates look like. And you already know that Judy is going to look good in our tools because people are going to be too nervous to play him, because I'm too nervous to play Jerry Judy. There's nothing technically saying that he can't pop off at this point in the season for the first time, but he just really, since that like big play in week 1, has been super quiet. I guess he had 4 catches on 5 targets for 53 yards and a score last week. I just haven't seen the explosive plays from Judy in the same way that I feel like I have already seen with Sutton. Is his projection ahead of salary-based expectation? Yeah, it is.
Drink.
That means you can play him. Yep.
Finally. God, 4:55 p.m. out here on the West Coast, 7:55 for your East Coasters. That's the first drink we've had the entire time.
Did you hear what producer Tyler did on the matchups show this Thursday or this morning? He did. He put a counter on the screen. I did 13 and a half.
Oh
so
my
I had to
God.
settle down. I had to settle
I would
down.
need a new liver at the end of that one. It's delicious, Austin Hope Merlot. But we continue on, shall we? The rest of the board at wide receiver. You don't play Sutton. You don't play Judy. It gets bleak because KJ Hamler, once upon a time, was supposed to be a thing from the Best Ball Bros. Yes, I was one of them. So were you. How are you feeling about KJ Hamler as an unexpected little play down there for Denver?
He's fast.
That was nice.
He ran 2 routes in week 4.
I know.
He ran 6 routes in week 3.
It's bad.
This is a super punt play. And you
punt return play.
You've got to pay a lot though in salary, $4,400 at the flex position. I get why our projections are going there. This is a guy with a 2% target share so far this season. Again, I'm not saying I got a lot of best ball shares. I'm hoping for the spike week tonight. It would be great, and he's not off limits in a 1-game slate. But there's not really a whole lot to like here. 1 yard of average separation at target, 0.18 fantasy points per route run. This is a bad situation unless injuries happen or something weird happens.
Oh, speaking of weird, Cleveland, this one's for you. It's
Tyree
okay. Cleveland joke.
Okay.
Are we going to roster any?
I watched that finals. Yeah.
Cool. I'm glad you enjoyed that too. Tyree Cleveland, I have 2% of. I'm double the field on DK. Cool. Actually, I'm technically 25%. I'm 5x the field because I have him in one
this
lineup.
Is the exact type of GPP play that you want to try to get to, right? 6'2", 210, runs a 4.46 40. That's 77th percentile according to playerprofiler.com. 1 catch, one big play, and he could find himself in the optimal lineup. He's got 3. Again, we're talking about a low probability, to say the least, play. He actually hasn't seen the field since week 2. He's got 3 total targets, 16% target per route run rate. Again, you're just looking for 1 deep pass from Russell Wilson.
Yep. You're looking for 1. We're going for 1. That was a push-up joke from, what was that? Can't remember that movie. Somebody in the chat is going to know. It's Major something. It's got Steve Martin in it. But anyway, we digress because otherwise we're just going to be hung up on that movie forever. And now that's all I can think about. Anything else from the wide receiver position for you as we get out of here? I guess one thing would be fun is if you had to get off the board and play anybody at MVP that we've talked about so far on FanDuel. Yes, I want to give FanDuel love too. No discrimination here, Squirrel. MVP spot. Give me an unexpected MVP.
Let me look here what I got going on at FanDuel. Okay, how about Albert O? Good transition.
Sergeant Bilko. Thank you, everybody. You're the best.
How about Albert O? That's
Albert O. That is disturbing. We'll get to the tight end position here next, but first, no house advantage. I want to make you guys money. That's the goal of these shows. We want to be a little entertaining from time to time. I know most of the time I can be a little out there, a little annoying from time to time even. Yes, I will admit that about myself. But at the heart of everything that I do is trying to make you guys money. And the best place to do that with your money today is going to No House Advantage and taking advantage of this massive amount of overlay. It's super easy to play. You simply play player props in a confidence slot. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There you go. You're putting 7 props together. You're picking over or under certain numbers. Do not play Jonathan Taylor because you will get a 0. So don't short his props thinking that you're being smart about it. You will get a 0. But right now it's just over half full. And you have an opportunity to make major money, $10K to first. So if you put $15 in right now and you use promo code Stokastic, you're going to get $15 back. You put up to $25 in, you're going to get $25 back. $10K to first. Yeah, it's as simple as that is what it sounds. So let's get you guys some money over there. My friend, Matt Savoca, is there a prop for No House Advantage today that you have your eye on for this evening?
Alec Pierce's receptions, little high for me, especially with my appreciation for Paris Campbell instead. Right now, it's looking at like the 3rd best under bet we have on the No House Advantage tool over at Stokastic.com, hitting the under on 2.5 catches a nice 69% of the time.
Oh, let me see here. Gackle, we've got a couple of super chats here. I'll get to these in 2 seconds. Thank you for the friendly reminder. We do have 15 minutes left to go here, but No House Advantage. I'm looking at one Mike Boone, 35.5 rushing yards. Yeah, that seems a little bit high to me. Feels a little bit aggressive at this point in time. So I'm going to be looking that direction. One thing that I used to do a lot over on No House Advantage was playing the over of 0.5 interceptions. I think it makes sense to do that with Matt Ryan once again today. Russell Wilson, probably not going to be going that direction at home. I guess you could take a look and see and cross-reference and use the books. Nobody said that you can't do that. So it gives you an opportunity to make some money in that direction. But it is such a fun site to be going and playing on. And it's especially fun when you get this massive amount of overlay. So go play that.
Can I add one thing,
Yes.
Eric, too? Because some person just took what I said about Pierce as an interpretation of don't play Pierce. This is a great time to talk about median projection versus ceiling projection, right? Because the median projection is what we're going to base our bets on. It's how we come up with some of our optimal lineups. But when we talk about tournaments and trying to take down a tournament like a Millie Maker, we're talking about range of outcomes. Could Alec Pierce catch more than 2.5 passes? Of course, guys. And if he catches one of them or two of them in the end zone, then he's probably going to be optimal in the showdown slate. So I'm not going to say don't play Alec Pierce, but when I look at the median projections, 70% of the time in our simulations being under the No House Advantage line, then that's still one of the best bets I could be most confident in on my NHA lineup.
All right, we got Gackle. Snap, Gackle, Pop. That was good. FanDuel Cash, playing 3 Denver players plus Denver D. Best choice to run it back from Indiana. We got Cox, Pierce, or Lindsay. According to you and projections and everything else, I would be going the Lindsay route. I've projected the highest. We have them projected the highest. Also, in terms of FanDuel half-point PPR, I mean, you're looking for touchdowns out of a guy like Mo Alley Cox. You're looking Alec Pierce maybe just see more routes run than what he has over the course of the last 2 weeks. But who is your favorite between those 3, Cox, Pierce, or Lindsay for FanDuel Cash?
For FanDuel Cash, that does change things a little bit because in tournaments, I kind of like Mo Alley Cox. But for FanDuel Cash, you go with the running back, you go with Phillip Lindsay.
Okay. Guys, thank you so much for checking out No House Advantage. Also, yes, Lofty, the like counts are a little low, especially because if we get to 400, Matt Savoca singing. I don't think you guys understand. Some call him the songbird of his generation. Just letting you know. And that's not a joke. I mean, it's going to be Ave Maria. If Ave Maria, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. Malcolm Revamp, $1.99. Is we playing? That's amazing. I'm not even mad at the grammatical error. Is we playing or fading Pittman on both sites cash? Well, I can tell you the optimal on DK does not have him.
Yeah.
And on FanDuel, it does not have him.
You don't
there
need
you
to
go.
have him. I could see how you get there, but honestly, his salary is pretty high, and he's one where his variance is high enough where you don't need to chase the ceiling in a cash game.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we continue on, everybody, to the tight end position. And I don't really know what to say about Mo Alley Cox and his massive 6-target, 6-reception, 85-yard game. He's been running more routes progressively, so that's been nice. Every single week, steady improvement in that direction. So that's a plus over 60% of the time on dropbacks last time out for Matt Ryan. But is that good enough at $8K? The most expensive tight end, $1,500 more than Albert O, but $1,500 more than Kylan Granson on the same team. How are we feeling about Mo Alley Cox right now on FanDuel, completely unowned?
I mean, it's too high a salary. Like, it doesn't feel good to chase touchdowns like we are, because it's not like in any other game he had more than 2 receptions. And then suddenly in week 4, he has 6 receptions, 2 touchdowns, 100% catch rate. The guy's still 29th in target share, 28th in air yard share among tight ends, 23rd in expected fantasy points per game among all tight ends. We need to contextualize this correctly. It sucks that the salary is so high, especially on FanDuel. But I mean, this, again, it's the same argument that I made for the secondary wide receivers. This team is starving for skill position players, starving for a player who can be efficient on 5 to 7 targets like Mo Alley Cox was last week. I actually like him as a player. My best ball shares would thank him for another spike week. And we're consistently seeing him at the 50 to 70% snap share rate, which is actually something I'm a little worried about for most of the running backs on this entire slate. I don't think he's a bad play today.
Albert O played 1 snap week 4. I think that's the analysis I have there. Are we going to try to make Albert O a thing today?
I still think they want him to be a thing.
No.
I'm an idiot. I'm a fool. I guess that might be a thing, but
you said it.
I said, look, this is a bad trend. 68% snap share week 1, 53 week 2, 30% week 3, 2.1% snap share week 4. I actually didn't realize it was that bad off the top of my head when I was just making my lineups initially. That is disturbing. That is the doghouse.
Yep. I can't do the same bit twice, but a couple super chats here quick, because again, you guys are just the best. Eric Traub, $5 equals 200 likes. I would say so. So automatically we're over 400. That makes my life easier. Trying to give in to the people. Douglas Bowman, $1.99, or Bauman, that would be more appropriate. Both kickers tonight, ? Or am I crazy? Not if Showdown keeps going the way it is. It's a low total game. Kickers, why not?
Yeah. Whenever someone says, should I play kicker tonight? It's about what you think the game environment will be. And that's really where we started tonight, right? We kind of went back and forth about what are the percentage chances this game actually goes over. And we kind of put it at real low. Like in 4 out of 5 times this game is simmed in our heads, it's kind of a defensive battle, which means that kickers could be highly involved and very, very useful in your lineups. You want the kicker slightly more on the favored team, especially when the salary is so similar. But do I really care at the end of the day? Not really.
Probably not. Another super chat. Malcolm Revamp. Gordon or Broncos D for both sites cash?
Gordon.
Yeah, I hate Gordon today, but I would play him in cash over the Broncos D.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine 4,200 Broncos D.
The Broncos
we'll get
D
there
are
next.
A good tournament play, though. Yeah, like we'll get there.
They're going to be so popular. They're going to be so
are.
popular, and I already feel pain and suffering in my man region. It's not going to be good. It hurts. It's going to be like me playing fetch with my dog, and then he just comes in full blast, 100-pound dog. I throw the little thing out there for him, and he comes running back, and he has no sense of personal space, 100 miles per hour, right into my body. In a bad place. Just,
oh gosh,
it was bad last week. I can't walk, but that's why I'm sitting for this show. Cool. We continue on. Anything else from tight end? Because I mean, those are your 2 major guys. I guess the tight end that makes sense would be getting to Eric Saubert, 1,200. Yeah. He's popular, and he's the guy who's playing over Alberto at the moment. How confident are you at $1,200 that he could show up in a lineup or 2?
And like Andrew Beck is playing. I mean, Saubert played 75% of snaps. He clearly took Alberto's job. Look, the reason I say in a Millie Maker situation, you want to play a player like Alberto is because he's athletic. He could come out of nowhere. Nobody wants him. Everyone's scared to play him. And even from a salary-based standpoint, it kind of doesn't make sense. Eric Saubert makes more sense, to be honest.
Yeah.
This team, we saw, especially week 1, utilize all 3 of their tight ends. Absolutely, you're praying for a touchdown here, but you have a high enough snap share and route run rate to say it's okay for a large field tournament.
All right. I have to amend something. I have 5 captains, not 4, as I just reran the final version of my crunch and am uploading it here to the old DraftKings.com. So I wanted to throw that out there for the people. I think we're caught up on Super Chat, which means it's kicker and defense time for the last 5 minutes. Oh, joy, my favorite. Brandon Mcmanus, he makes sense. Chase McLaughlin, I will remember you. How do you feel about kickers today?
I just Sarah Chase McLaughlin did.
Jordan Klein is so mad.
No, he's so upset. He's like stewing. He's like, why is he doing this? McManus, you brought up McManus. He's a kicker on a 1-game slate. Look, his salary is a little bit more. His projection is a little bit more. His ownership is a little bit more. Do with that as you will. You can certainly differentiate yourself if you play Mcmanus. I want to shout out Stokastic, one of our producers over here, because he had a great chat just talking about how when someone says, should I play X player, it really means, what story are you telling? How many lineups are you running out? What is your risk tolerance? I couldn't have said it better myself. Looks like someone's been hanging around in the Stokastic streets for a while, man. Yeah, exactly. It's all about the context you're playing them in. Could the Denver kicker be in the optimal lineup tonight? Absolutely.
I got to work on it a little bit more. My Mike Lawrence impression. It's definitely something I'm working on. Oh, good morning to you too, Duke. Hello.
What's up?
There he is. Yeah, he just woke up. 4 minutes left in the show. Perfect timing. He's like, oh, you got to take me outside now. Yeah, I know. Oh, that was a big yawn. That was a big yawn from a big puppy. How you feeling about the defenses here on today's slate to round out the show?
Yeah, so obviously you can play Chase McLaughlin as well. I tuned him out of my head when he brought up the Sarah McLaughlin thing. You can play in. It
was beautiful,
kicker, especially when Matt Ryan has a huge chance of ruin. Denver's defense, man, this is kind of what you're doing with Denver's defense is kind of a big decision tonight. They are in the optimal lineup as a flex play 21% of the time. And when you add in their slight chances of actually being an optimal captain play on DraftKings, they're in the optimal lineup essentially a quarter of the time. So even if I'm seeing pretty high ownership, I'm going to be right there. Matt Ryan could absolutely blow in this game. We saw basically he turned around an absolutely horrible start in week 4, fumbling, interceptions. He's at a 73% completion percentage the last 2 weeks. If he gets back down to week 2 and week 1 levels, which is around 60%, it could be disastrous unless he's throwing like 55 times.
Yep. It's going to get really uncomfortable because I have like 1 or 2 shares of over on FanDuel, even just defense captain. Like we're talking like the worst game script ever, like the 11-10 San Francisco Denver game script. Just getting to like a captain of them, but I can't stomach it unless you're playing Rainmakers where you can just go Captain Sutton, 3 defensive players from either side and call it a day. I can't get to the field on Denver because I can guarantee you when we get to lock here, 2 minutes, we're going to see like 30% on them. And here it goes again. It's like, oh shit, here we go again. The Grand Theft Auto meme. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Yeah. There it is. Let's go. How many likes are we at, by the way, for the people? Because as we're winding down the show, you have made a promise, and a promise you must keep. 460 likes? You guys are the best. Look at that. I knew how to get it, and it was with them pipes. Do we have a recommendation in the chat on which song to be going to?
I can't even choose.
No, producer Jordan gets to choose.
What?
Jordan, go in the chat.
No, he doesn't want that. I don't want that smoke.
I want like Les Mis or I want Nicki Minaj.
Getting,
I want nothing in between.
Birds flying high. You know how I feel. Sun in the sky. You know how I feel. Let's go win some money, guys. Let's go do it.
Holy shit.
Let's do it.
Love. That was beautiful. Hit that like button, y'all. My God, I'm going to go let Duke out before I watch football on the old Amazon Prime like an absolute noob, because that's all we're forced to do now. Thank you so much to Matt Savoca. Any final words for the people as we get out of here?
You guys are ridiculous. Chat, I mean, if you guys have been on the Stokastic DFS channel all day, you guys have been my absolute hero. From the DFS strategy show this morning to now, you guys are the absolute best. You guys make this job a dream. This is awesome. Appreciate you guys. Let's win some cash.
And everybody else here at Stokastic makes this job just okay for me. So, I'll take it. I'll take it. That's good for me. Thank you so much to producer Jordan behind the virtual pay glass. I don't know if we're paying him, whatever it is. I don't know. We're leaving, baby. Best of luck. Go Broncos.
It's under. The under's hitting today.
Smash the under, baby. Let's go. Thank you to No House Advantage. We're out of here. See you back here on Sunday.